meeting to order. I call this meeting of the Northwest Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Opens Meeting Act, Texas Government Code 551. And now we will go to closed session. Thank you for being here tonight, and we're going to start out with our School First public hearing. Dr. Warren?
Mr. Gresswich. And which one? Mr. Gresswich.
I'm looking for a clicker. Okie doke, now we can start. All righty. This is, of course, the School First hearing of the Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas. The purpose is to achieve performance in the management of financial resources and demonstrate increases in performance. For the 16th consecutive year and every year, we have achieved, of course, the highest rating, which shows that not only is the school district accountable for student learning, but also for achieving these results cost effectively and efficiently. Highest rating is superior. You have to score of 90 to 100. The school district had 100, perfect score. Just to run through quickly, the ratings was the complete financial audit report and data submitted in a timely basis? Yes. Was there an unmodified opinion in the annual financial report? Yes. Did the external independent auditor report was free of any instances of material weaknesses in internal control? Yes. District in compliance with the terms of all debt payments? Of course, for this district, that's really important. Yes. District make timely payments to the teacher retirement system? Yes. Total unrestricted net asset balance greater than zero? Yes, we have net assets. Number of days of cash on hand sufficient? We got 10 points out of 10. Measure of current assets to current liabilities sufficient to cover short-term debt? Yes, we can pay our bills, including debt. Long-term liabilities sufficient? Yes. So both on a short and a long-term basis, we're okay. District's general fund revenues equal or exceed expenditures? Yes. Including fund balance. Was the debt service coverage ratio sufficient to meet the required debt service? Yes, we can pay our bills. Was the district administrative cost ratio? This is an important one here. Was the administrative cost ratio equal to or less than the threshold ratio? Yes, our administrative costs are not excessive. Did the district not have 15% decline in the students to staff? This is for districts that are basically losing enrollment, which is not our problem. Did the comparison of the PEIMS data, did we file our PEIMS data correctly? Yes, and Lynn Sneed and the crew are doing an outstanding job in that area, except Lynn's retired and we've passed the baton and they're still doing an excellent job. Did the external independent auditor indicate the annual financial report was free of instances of material noncompliance for grants? So not only did they audit the general fund and the debt service funds, they also check our grants and they were okay as well. You're nodding your head, right, Carl? Yes, good. Did the district not receive an adjusted No, that's not a problem either. So basically, we covered all the bases. We got 100 out of 100 points for the 16th consecutive year, and the district is doing an outstanding job on the financial side as well as on the academic side. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, this is a public hearing if anyone has a question. If not, I will close the public hearing and we will move on and reconvene to our regular meeting and our invocation and pledge. Dr. Warren?
Okay. Folks, we appreciate everybody coming out tonight. If everybody would please stand. And first of all, if you feel comfortable doing so, please pray with me. Our dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day, and Lord, thank you for the rain, and Lord, also thank you for the sunshine these last couple of days. That's greatly appreciated. We ask that you bless us all in this meeting, be with our board members as they make these very important decisions for our children, Lord. Bless everyone, see everybody safely home, and above all things, Lord, just give your love, your guidance, your wisdom, and your protection to our children. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Thank you all. All right, we have two very special guests from Seven Hills Elementary. Mrs. Blackburn, thank you for coming tonight. And let's see, Brianna, thank you for coming. Mom, thank you very much. Okay, we have Riley. Raise your hand. Do you two know each other?
Yes.
Okay. Briley Wallace is a fifth grader at the Hills. Briley, let's see, much like her sister, Briley loves math. Good job, Briley. She enjoys learning, doing hard things, and using her strategies to solve problems. She loves to play volleyball. She's just a little bit competitive. Is that right? Okay. And she loves to work with her teammates for a win. It says, this is what Mrs. Blackburn said about Briley. Leaders believe that change starts with themselves. They recognize that what they want to see change in themselves with their friends in their classrooms, and Briley is our leader. She is a strong work ethic, often goes beyond and above and beyond in the classroom. She truly is modeling the belief that you can be the change if you want to see it in the world. Good job, Briley. Thank you for being here. And then Brooklyn, raise your hand. Wave at everybody. Brooklyn is also a fifth grader. She also loves what?
Volleyball.
Yep, and
Math.
yeah, thank you. She does love volleyball. She loves being with her teammates. This is what Mrs. Blackburn said about Brooklyn. Part of our mission at Seven Hills is that together we accomplish greatness. We believe that being together is better, and Brooklyn is a perfect example of this synergy in action. She is always willing to help a friend, step in to help a teacher, and take on a new project with the student Lighthouse team. She has found her voice as a campus tour guide, and this is Mrs. Blackburn talking. I am very proud of her for leading the pledges this evening. Brooklyn is a true Seven Hills star leader. So ladies, we're going to do the American flag first and then the Texas pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Now Texas, please.
Pledge to the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Great job, ladies. Stay right there. We got a little present for you. Mrs. Kopp will be there.
Okay, now we're moving on to recognitions. Dr. Warren?
Mrs. Conklin. Awesome.
Is this working? Okay. The district has also received a Certificate of Excellence from the Association of School Business Officials International. Congratulations. Many of our students participated in the Fort Worth Alliance Air Show last weekend, and this evening we are recognizing FedEx representatives for their partnership with Career and Technical Education. So I'd like to invite our Executive Director, Celine Broswell, and then we have a few FedEx representatives here with us. We have Jared Reynolds, Sophin Say, and then we're also recognizing Keenan Callahan. For the last 2 years, Mr. Reynolds and his team have ensured that Northwest ISD could fully participate in the Fort Worth Alliance Air Show. All 3 floral programs contributed arrangements for the Hillwood Chalet and Captain's Club Chalet for Alliance. FedEx and a team of drivers, Jared, Sophin, and Keenan, and Damien, to make sure that more than 170 arrangements from Byron Blooms, Texan Flowers, and Eaton Floral Expressions were delivered on time and securely. Thank you so much for your partnership. So next, I would like to invite Eaton High School Principal Mike Blankenship We also have the art teacher, Tony Byam Perot, and then her students, Reagan LaGrain, Caitlin Zachary, Juan Guzman, Taylor Cox, come on to the front, Colton Pratt, and Ethan Lay. We also have Wyatt Rutan, who's not able to make it this evening, but did want to mention his name. So I'm not sure if everyone had a chance to see the artwork outside of Dr. Warren's office, and we would show it to you on your screens, but I think we're having technical difficulties still, but we did have a picture of it. But there are paintings. Yes. It looks so good. They designed the paintings, and they were all designed by these students right here outside of Dr. Warren's office. So we want to recognize you this evening for your talented work and the true visual picture of what our school district's vision is. So thank you. Next, I would like to ask Clara Love Elementary 5th grade teachers Sarah Aldridge and Jen Hall to come to the front. And then we also have their principal, Lisa Crossland, here. You can come to the front too. No? And then do we have anyone from CoServe here? I thought that they might be sending someone. I don't see him. Okay. So Ms. Aldridge and Ms. Hall have been named CoServe's Teachers of the Month for October. This is a new initiative that CoServe had approached the Education Foundation about. But Sarah and Jen turned their 5th grade classroom into an operating room where students could operate on a diaper using lab procedures and surgical tools. Students were able to scrub in and wear surgical gloves, masks, and gowns to conduct experiments on the diaper's absorbencies. They were awarded $250 each from CoServe to use to enhance their classrooms, and they will be recognized this Friday during halftime at the Byron Nelson versus Keller High School football game. Congratulations. Next, I'd like to introduce Jerry Cantu, who's our communications coordinator, who is recognizing our new Adopt a School partners today.
Thank you, Emily. Tonight we are excited to welcome 3 new partners to our Adopt a School program, which again we started approximately 2 years ago. We have now expanded and we are now up to almost 25 Adopt a School partners. So we're really excited about adding new partners to help our campuses. First off, we would like to welcome Elizabeth Stamper with Chewy's from Alliance Town Center. You can come on up and join us, please. Chewy's has been partnering with O.A. Peterson Elementary School and Principal Justin Vercher on their Student Recognition Program. Student Recognition Program recognizes students for attendance, also performances in the classroom, and we'd like to welcome them to our Adopt a School program. Also here with us tonight, Brianna Frejo, if you would, join us up front, please. Brianna is with the Sonic Tahama Ridge restaurant, and again, they also work with Peterson Elementary, also providing prizes and gift cards to our students as part of their student recognition program. Thank you, Brianna. And I'm sorry? Well, thank you for that, Phil. I appreciate it. And finally, we'd like to recognize Milestone Home Team. If Jennifer Buchanan and April Detman, if you would join us up front. The Milestone Home Team are part of the Century 21 Mike Bowman Realtors group. They are adopting 3 campuses for the Adopt a School program. They are going to adopt Hughes, Granger, and Peterson Elementary Schools to join them in recognizing teacher and staff through their appreciation initiatives. Please join us in welcoming the Milestone Home Team group. And that's it for our Adopt a School partners.
All right, guests, y'all are more than welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting. If you want to excuse yourself, we understand that.
All right, moving on to public participation, and I believe there's none.
Brenda?
Okay, thank you, Brenda. Okay, consent agenda.
Madam
Board?
President,
Mr. Sluter.
I move to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Discussion? Yes, I'm sorry. Do we have any?
Yes, I would like to remove K from the consent agenda.
Okay. Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Sluter and a second by Mr. Wright with the removal of item K from the consent agenda to be discussed later. All those in favor? Okay.
Is it because they had Texas Tech on it? I'm just kidding. Talk about that later.
Moving down to discussion action items. A, 2018-19 campus improvement goals and objectives. Dr. Warren?
Board, in your very thin packet this month, your campus improvement plans that were introduced to you last month that begin on page 136. I'll reiterate what I told you and what the crew did last month. The principals and their staff did a wonderful, wonderful job of putting together these improvement plans. We think they're going to really drive us forward this year. So after any of your questions, I recommend approval of the 18-19 campus improvement goals and objectives.
Any questions? Discussion?
I have a question. The Lexia program, I noticed that a lot of the elementary schools are implementing it next year, and I know that it had been, I guess, piloted would be the word, on at least Justin's campus. I was just wondering, do the campuses choose? Is it assigned? How does that work?
It was piloted at 5 campuses last year. Our 5 Title I campuses all piloted it at each grade level, and we received overwhelming feedback from the teachers and the administrators, the impact that it had. We also saw an impact in our data on those campuses, and we then shared that information with principals several times, elementary principals several times throughout the year last year to gain feedback from them, and they were all very interested in having that as a resource on their campuses. So we were able to provide it for all of our campuses this year. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that they're questions as much as comments. I really saw several things in the campus plans that were wonderful. The extended hours for the library staying open at Eaton, the opportunities for students at Steele to stay later and get their work, the idea that they would be able to have 10 students achieve an associate's degree. I saw some fabulous things in these plans, and I really appreciated the things I saw. I also have some concern. When we pilot programs, I think it would be really helpful for us as a board to have those data and to understand. And just because reading is my background, I had some real concerns about some of the ways in which we were measuring. And I think I've expressed that. I certainly support the goals, but if our measures aren't aligned with our goals, and if we're not able to really match those up well and feel confident in them, then it's hard to really support the campus plans. I do appreciate all the work that's gone in, and I think the uniqueness by campus is important, but that would be my reservation.
Madam President,
Mr. Wright?
I move to approve the 2018-2019 campus improvement goals and objectives as recommended by the administration.
I have a motion by Mr. Wright, a second by Mr. Sproles. All those in favor? Okay. 6 and, okay. We got 6 and 1 abstain.
Can I add one piece of feedback from the campus principals on behalf of all of them? They truly appreciated having some extended time this year to work through their campus improvement plans. I heard from numerous principals that really helped them have time with their staff to develop the plans, and they were very appreciative of that. So thank you very much for
Thank you for allowing us to modify that schedule, Board.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, our next item is the comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2018. Dr. Warren?
Mr. Carter. Thank you, Dr. Warren. Good evening, Board. You should have the rather thin, as Dr. Warren is using tonight, comprehensive annual financial report in its 100-plus page glory. Tonight we are presenting that report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2018. For your approval, along with the resolution to commit fund balance under the provisions of GASB 54. Texas Education Code does require that all school districts file a set of financial statements within 150 days after the end of the fiscal year, excuse me. These statements must be presented in conformity with the general accepted accounting principles and audited by a firm of licensed CPAs. The report is presented in 4 major sections. You have the introductory section, which includes the transmittal letter, 2 certificates of excellence for financial reporting the district received, a list of the consultants and advisors, as well as an organizational chart. The next section is the financial section, which includes the auditor's report. It includes the basic financial statements, and includes the various schedules that are presented tonight, as well as the supplementary information to go along with those schedules. The statistical section includes 19 schedules that relate to revenue, expense, debt reporting, capacity, demographics, economics, and those are typically presented in a 10-year historical trend. And then the final section is a single audit section. That's the schedule of federal awards, the reports regarding internal controls and compliance, as well as a schedule of findings for the current year and prior years. The firm of Hankins, ESTEP, Deaton, Ton, and C have audited these financial statements, and Mr. Carl Deaton is here tonight with that firm to present these reports in more detail.
Hello, Carl. Thank you, Dr. Moore.
Good to see you again.
Yes, members of the board. What you heard earlier concerning the first rating, that was looking back at 16-17 and how those finances were. This is the 17-18 year of financial activity and results of operations. And as Brian said, it's getting to be a fairly lengthy report. It's over 170 pages. I just want to hit the highlights on a few pages and then see if you have any questions. On page 37 is where the independent auditor's report letter is. Even that report letter gets longer each year, but it is what is called an unmodified opinion, basically a clean opinion, which says that, in our opinion, the financial statements in this report present fairly the financial position, the results of operations of the district for this last fiscal year. And if you turn to page 54, 54 has the activity, the results of the activity last year for the primary funds of the district, the largest funds that account for the most activity, the most important fund being the general fund, the left column on page 54. If you recall all the way back to the beginning of 17-18, you adopted an initial balanced budget for 17-18 for the general fund. On page 54, that general fund column, about 3/4 of the way down, shows that the general fund actually had a $3.9 million surplus last year. However, you see right below that you committed $20 million of fund balance to basically purchase the bus fleet. And so you see that $20 million being deducted out. It was transferred over into the capital projects fund on that page. So bottom line, there was a $16 million decrease in your general fund balance last year, from $112 million down to $96 million. Going up that column again, the general fund spent $196 million last year. So $96 million of fund balance is about 6 months worth of last year's spending that you have in fund balance at the end of the year, which at this point in time, at this date, is a nice, healthy months of reserve to have. The middle column of page 54 is the debt service fund. It collects the interest and sinking portion of your property taxes and pays the principal and interest payments on your bonded debt. It also accounts for any bond refundings that are done in order to help reduce the interest rates and save interest on your outstanding debt. And bottom line, you see that the debt service fund added close to $3 million to its fund balance reserves last year, increasing from $39 million to $42 million. That fund spent $66 million last year on principal and interest debt service, so that's about 2/3 of a year of reserves you have in that fund at the end of the year. The capital projects fund is the final fund on page 54. It's the fund that accounts for any new money bond sales that are done. And of course, you did have a large bond sale this last year, which is shown coming into the fund toward the bottom of that column. You spent over $100 million on construction projects and renovations this last year as well. But bottom line, you see there's still, the ending fund balance, there's still $120 million of unspent bond funds at the end of the year for construction projects that are either planned or were ongoing at that date. Turning all the way over to page 110 is probably the next most important fund. It's the last one that you adopt a legal budget for each year. On page 110, that right column is the food service or child nutrition fund. It's expected to generate revenue to cover its costs, and you see going to the bottom of that column that there was an increase in its fund balance of $26,000 last year. However, that $26,000 surplus is after $180,000 of surplus was transferred out to the general fund to help reimburse the general fund for administrative costs, indirect costs for basically what the general fund pays to help provide for food service facilities, cafeterias, accounting, things like that. Ending fund balance in this fund is $1,066,000. There is a limit on what you can have as fund balance in this fund. You're only about halfway toward the maximum that you could have. The $1 million is a nice, healthy fund balance for that fund as well. There are about 20 other funds. A lot of those you see on the page we're on now, page 110, 112, 111, and 112, that basically account primarily for various federal funds and other state and local funds that you receive. There's really nothing of particular I wanted to point out about those. A couple other things I do want to point out. On page 127, something you might not see on a regular basis is a summary for the year of the property tax collection activity for the school district. And the schedule on page 27 reflects good news in that the left column on page 27 shows taxpayers owed about $5.7 million in delinquent taxes coming into last year. The right column shows that at the end of the year, that figure dropped to $5.5 million. So the district had an excellent year collecting property taxes this last year, whether it was just up to citizens paying or up to your delinquent tax attorneys doing a good job in collecting some delinquents. But of course, a good collection year here does contribute to and help out your fund balance reserves. And then toward the back of the report, Brian pointed out the single audit section. I just want to point out, beginning at page 169, that there are, in that section, 2 additional auditor's report letters. One basically covers internal control. If there had been material weaknesses or significant deficiencies we had noticed in the district's internal control system, they would have been detailed on pages 169 and 170. However, this opinion, or this report is again what's called an unmodified or clean opinion. And then on page 171 is a third auditor's report letter that basically addresses whether or not we found compliance problems with the federal programs that we were required to look at this year. And this is what you would consider a clean opinion, in that we didn't find anything that was a compliance issue that needed to be disclosed. And those 2 letters lead up on page 170 to page 175, which details all the federal dollars the district receives for the Title I program, the special ed program, the food service program, and so on. And the largest programs you see on that page are the ones that we as auditors are required to rotate through and look at the various compliance detail requirements and see if you adhere to those. And then one other thing I just want to mention and point out, one reason this report keeps getting longer and longer each year is that there's probably 15 to 20 pages of this report now that entail discussing the TRS pension plan and the TRS health care plan for district employees and retirees. And there's a lot of information that's really, in my opinion, difficult to understand in this report as far as accounting for some of that. But if you're really just interested in some of that, there are some tables on pages 99 through 102 that basically give some information about what the district contributes to the TRS pension plan and the TRS care health insurance plan, active care each year, and the status of those plans as far as how funded or unfunded they are. But don't want to spend time going into the detail on that, but there's plenty of information, some lengthy footnotes about both those plans if you're interested in learning about those and how they impact the school district. And then finally, you should have received as a separate letter, a management letter from us with a couple areas that we made comments and recommendations on. It's not required to be part of the bound audit report, but it is a communication to you from us. So if there's anything you saw or that I just said that raises a question, I'd be happy to try to answer it.
Anybody have a question or comment?
Carl, nice job.
Okay, you're going to let me off light then? Okay, all right, thank you.
Board, I would recommend approval of the annual financial report.
Madam President,
Mr. Sproles?
I move to approve the comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2018, and funds balance resolutions as recommended by the administration.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Sproles, a second by Dr. Roush. All those in favor? Carries 7-0.
Thank you, Board.
Okay, our next item is the resolution of the board approved credit by examination audit process. Dr. Warren?
Board, on page 1064 in your packet and page 1065 is the actual resolution. Michael explained to you last board meeting, the state now requires the school districts have an audit process for credit by exams, that process, but the caveat is that if school districts use tests that are developed by the University of Texas at Austin or Texas Tech University that suffice for the audit process, and we were not able to do so. This resolution states that NISD does use those exams from UTA and UT Austin and Texas Tech, and so my recommendation is that you approve this resolution so that we can certify the state that we have met their expectation.
Madam President? I motion that we approve the resolution for approved credit by examination audit process as recommended by the administration.
A motion by Dr. Roush. I have a motion by Dr. Roush and a second by Mr. Hastings. Does anybody have any questions or comment before we vote? All those in favor? Carries 7-0.
Thank you, Board.
Okay, our next item is amendment to Transportation Services Agreement. Dr. Warren?
Board, the information on this also starts on page 1069 in your packet. Mr. Graswich is continuing to negotiate with our new bus provider to make sure that agreement is the very best for both of us. John, you want to go into a little detail of what this calls for?
Yeah, essentially the trip rate went up to $124.36, and Joel and Kevin seized up and informed me they didn't have the money to pay that, and so we went to work to try to help out. Essentially, what we did was they had raised the number of surplus drivers above and from the 10% threshold to a 20% threshold, which is really unnecessary. 10% will more than be adequate. So what we did was say, okay, well, we're going to lower the penalties and eliminate all that and take you down from 20 to 10, but you cut the field trip rate from 124 down to 100 so that it's more affordable for the various field trip groups, including fine arts, campuses, and athletics. So it was an equitable trade-off that still maintains the safety and the staffing adequately and appropriately, but cuts the cost to the district.
Board, I'd recommend approval.
Madam President,
Mr. Schluter?
I move to approve the amendment to the Transportation Services Agreement as recommended by the administration.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Schluter, a second by Dr. Simpson. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor? Carries 7-0.
Thank you, Board.
Our next item is construction delivery method for Phase 3 work at the Outdoor Learning Center. Dr. Warren?
Well, Board, just slightly over the ribbon cutting ceremonies by about 2 years.
Yeah.
We're going to get the OLC taken care of. So, we usually do these delivery methods on consent agenda, but I thought that y'all would like to hear kind of the issue that Tim has been working through. So, Tim, please.
Yep. Good evening, Board. Just want to bring you up to speed. So we've got a couple different scenarios or situations that have presented themselves out at the OLC with the building coming online, the facility coming online, and then some flooding issues that we've been dealing with and having to mitigate along the way. There's kind of two parts to this. The first part is the building. There were some issues with the gutter system and the way that was designed, and it wasn't able to handle the actual flow coming off the roofs. And so, hey, we might have a presentation there now. It's the wrong presentation. That's later, but it's
keep rolling.
It's about 4 ahead of that. Yeah, no, about 4. No, not the slides. 4 presentations on your items. Okay. While he finishes looking at that, we'll get it pulled up. But the building situation is a warranty issue that Stantec is taking care of, and that work is actually scheduled to begin starting in the next few weeks. The contractor has actually started to mobilize out there. They've started to order the materials, and so you won't hear me say anything about that other than the work is being corrected. There's nothing for us to do. They're taking care of all expenses that come with that piece. Here we go. And then that leads us to the second part, which is the site issue with some of the design of the site, some of the drainage of the site, some of the maintenance of the site. And so at this point, this required kind of the 3 entities to sit down: the district, the actual landscape architect for the OLC, and then Stantec as the primary architect. And we've sat down now for several meetings and several discussions and kind of gone round and round. And basically we've come to the understanding that there is a large majority of the work in this phase that is warranty work that needs to be corrected, and that will not come to any cost to the district. There is a small portion of work that is still kind of up for discussion. And so the 3 entities have an agreement in place that says we need to bid the work, get the dollars in, and then sit down and sort through who's taking care of that kind of small portion that we all agree is potentially not warranty work. So there's still some discussions to be had. What I'm bringing to you tonight, and if you look at the attachments now that I have them up on the screen, you'll see the yellow areas are the areas that we're talking about. Now, there's multiple notes, and I'm sorry those notes probably in the corner there are not legible on the screen. But there are multiple engineering notes that are giving direction to the bidders on how to correct the issue. Some of that's increasing pipe size, some of that's redoing some grades, some of that's adding some other implements to the drainage scenario. But this is all up around the Great Hall. The next slide kind of comes down the road, so the embankment that follows the road, there needs to be some work and improvements down there. And then when you get down to the pavilion area, we get some flooding that comes across the pavilion that needs to be handled on the north end there of the site. So all that to say is we're asking for you to approve the CSP delivery methods so we can actually get the numbers in, go through that, sit down with all 3 parties, go through that, and then bring that back to you so you can see who's taking care of what cost associated with the problem. But I will reiterate that the large majority will not be back on us. There's a small piece that we've got to work out between the 3 entities.
What's a small piece, Tim? What is that?
It would be some things. I'll give you an example. So an example would be landscaping material or grass materials were put in that were supposed to grow to a height of, say, 12 to 16 inches to help mitigate water. Well, we mowed them. So the discussion on those type of things is, was that the right material to go in or not? You know, so those type of things. I mean, that would be a good example. So
if it's grass, we mow it.
Yeah, well, you know.
Exactly.
So you're saying, Tim, that's an architectural issue and not an engineering issue. Is that correct?
I'm saying we haven't determined that yet. As I keep looking at my general counsel to make sure I'm staying within the bounds of the agreement. So.
And so, Tim, we're recommending to the board tonight to approve the competitive seal proposal.
That's correct. With your approval, we would take that out for bid, and then I would hope as early as November, but maybe as late as December, be back in front of you with the agreed upon expenses by each party. And that really helps us dovetail that portion of work. They'll already be out there doing the building portion. And so if that contractor who's already agreed to do the building portion is the selected awarder of the other work, then it would help dovetail. If not, then we've got to kind of manage two different construction companies, but we'll handle that. Sarah does a great job at that. She has no idea what I said because she's in conversation. So.
Board would recommend approval.
Tim, I just want to say thank you for keeping us informed about this.
Absolutely. Well, I feel like it's come late, but it's been a long process, and until we knew something to update you about, it's just been a really long process, but you're welcome.
Mrs. Kopp, I move to approve competitive sealed proposal as the delivery method for the Phase 3 work at the Outdoor Learning Center as recommended by administration.
Second.
Yeah.
Motion by Dr. Simpson, a second by Mr. Wright. All those in favor? 7-0.
Thank you, board.
All right, our next item, guaranteed maximum price for Sendero Ranch Elementary School and J.C. Thompson Elementary School additions and renovations. Dr. Warren?
Board, in your packet, beginning on page 1079, very exciting times around Sendero Ranch because we are ready to commence the work for the work to do on the additions and the renovations for Sendero Ranch Elementary and J.C. Thompson Elementary. Board, these projects were approved by the 2017 bond election, and we appreciate our folks being able to do this. The total recommended price for both of these projects combined is $12,444,967. I would recommend approval.
Madam President.
Mr. Wright?
I move to approve the guaranteed maximum price for Sendero Ranch Elementary School and J.C. Thompson Elementary School additions and renovations in the amount of $12,445,967.00 as recommended by the administration.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Wright and a second by Dr. Roush. Any other comments or questions?
So these were brought up to 850 student capacity? That's the 650 now?
They're 650 now and will be brought up to 850, yes, sir.
Good. That's all I have.
Okay. All those in favor? 7-0.
Thank you, board.
Okay, our next item is the 2018-19 Instructional Materials Selection Committee. Dr. Warren?
Board, on page 1093 in your packet, you have Brittany, Sonny, and Veronica are here. They've done an outstanding job getting the committee together. This is something we do every year. After your questions to them, I would recommend approval of this year's committee for our instructional materials.
You ready for a motion?
I didn't know if they were going to.
No, they're here for you. They are here for you.
Question. Anybody have a question?
Anybody have a question?
Question? No questions? Do I have a motion?
Well, I have a question. Just for parental input, how will you gather that?
Yeah, we have a public viewing along at campuses, but also here at administration that we allow the public to come in and view and talk with us about the materials that are up for adoption.
Any other questions?
Madam President.
Mr. Schluter?
I move to approve the 2018-2019 Instructional Materials Selection Committee as recommended by the administration.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion by Mr. Sluter, a second by Dr. Roush. All those in favor? Carries 7-0.
Could we have them sing while they're up there? I know like they're about ready to sing.
I know, it looks like a...
All right, go ahead. Go on, Brittany.
All right, our next item is the Northwest ISD 2019 legislative priorities. Dr. Warren?
All right, Board, I've been threatening you with these for about 2 months, and I finally got them developed. Board, on page, it begins on page 1172. 1173 begins the actual recommendations. Now, let me say, when I say recommendations, this is definitely a living document. I would like, and I need your input on all of these. So you have two different parts to this. You have the actual legislative priorities, and Board, really, I very much appreciate the cabinet. Every director, every deputy and assistant superintendent have pitched in on this and contributed to this. So those are your recommended in the areas in which they belong to: finance, accountability assessment, school safety, local control, TRS, infrastructure, transportation infrastructure. So the homework for you guys over this next month is to go through and look at the recommendations, and then in your blue folder that you have by your place, I gave you some backup materials. You have the recommendations, you have the current recommendations from TASA, you have the current recommendations from TASB, from the Fast Growth School Coalition, and I brought in the priorities that you approved for the 2017 legislative session. So all those together, if you would take the next 3 to 4 weeks, or a couple 3 weeks, and really look over, and I'd like to have a kind of an extended conversation about these and wordsmith, clean up as you feel fit. These are your priorities that we will go to our legislators to do, because the day after our November board meeting, these will be forwarded to each of the each of our 8 legislators, and I will do my best to have face-to-face discussions about this with them before the beginning of the session. So this is a report only. If you have any questions right now, I'll be happy to attempt to answer questions. But really, the bulk of the conversations I'll look forward to have with you is November when we present this.
I just had a question about the audience, but you've clarified that, so thank you.
Could I add something on here, maybe about board attire, the way they address it for board meetings?
What are you saying?
That's going to be in policies here in a minute.
We'll put that in with the dress code.
Okay.
Thank you, Board.
Moving on to Board Policy Update 111, Dr. Warren.
Mrs. Hobbs has done an amazing job working with her committees on Policy Update 111. She continues to work through those, and so she will report to you both this is a report only regarding the legal update for 118 and plus the local implications as well. Mrs. Hobbs?
All right, so Board Policy Update 111 has 6 local policies being updated and 57 legal policies. And then just for ease of everybody's time tonight in this presentation, we're also discussing 2 policies that are part of Local District Update 2018.07, 2 additional things that we needed to clean up at this time. All right, there is one policy under local governance.
Oh, really? Really?
That's BBD local. And this adds a requirement that TASB recommends just in the spirit of transparency. The law requires that an announcement be made at the board meeting immediately preceding a uniform election date regarding board member compliance with continuing ed requirements. There's a tiny loophole where if there's not an election, if we don't have a contested seat and the election is canceled, then arguably you wouldn't have to make that announcement. So TASB is recommending just closing up that loophole and adding into local policy that whether or not there's an election, that announcement would be made. And the board policy committee that reviewed that supports that recommendation as well. Moving on to personnel, we looked at 2 policies that dealt with alcohol and drug use of employees. DHE local would be amended to clarify that an employee may be removed from duty and required to go have drug testing if they were suspected of drug or alcohol abuse on the job. It also states that an employee who refuses to comply could be terminated or disciplined. And then DI local, all this change does is move provisions of the Federal Drug-Free Workplace Act. It moves them from a local policy and it puts them in a legal policy, which is really where they should have been from the beginning. I'm not sure how the federal law ended up as a local policy, but this is a cleanup just to put that where it belongs. Under business and support services, our committee really put their heads together on how to fight financial fraud. TASB recommended, so the provisions for reporting suspected fraud came with some recommendations from TASB. TASB recommended adding to the list of people to whom suspected fraud could be reported, quote, a person with authority to investigate the suspicions. Which is it's a good policy change. We don't oppose that. And then the committee recommended making some additional changes to close any loopholes that might be there. There were some concerns that if all someone has to do is report suspected fraud, that what does the person who they have reported to do with that report? And so what we are recommending is adding another sentence in there that requires that the person who receives the report of fraud has to report to the superintendent within 24 hours. And that would prevent a fraud report from sitting somewhere in the district that the superintendent is not aware of. And then we are also recommending additional changes in the unlikely event that the superintendent was suspected of fraud, but that report would be made to general counsel, and then general counsel would report that to the board president. And these are changes really just to close up any loopholes and to make sure that any suspected fraud is investigated and handled promptly and appropriately. Then under contracted services, there is a change added to local policy to really put into local what was in some administrative rules that have since expired. Typically when a vendor is performing work on a campus, they have to have undergone a background check and be cleared before they can be on the campus. But in the very rare event that we have an emergency and a vendor can't provide anyone who's already been cleared, this would allow only in emergency circumstances for someone who does not have the requisite criminal background to come and do emergency work, so long as they are supervised the entire time they're on the campus. At any time, students might be present. And that's to ensure safety of everybody there. Then under students, we have just a few policies here. FEA local would be amended to make a clarification. Currently, students who are exploring enrolling in the armed forces can get up to 4 days for unexcused absences to do that exploration the same way that students could go to college visits. And this just clarifies that those 4 absences are over the course of the high school career and not 4 absences per year. And then FFAC local, these last 2 are actually from our local district update. FFAC local deals with medical treatment of diabetic students. And TASB had actually drafted these changes for us, recommending that every campus have unassigned EpiPens available at all times that any students might be present, and that people be trained to administer those. And then the last one, FFC exhibit, all we're doing here is updating the name of our liaison to homeless students to Victoria Cole, as she's recently taken on those responsibilities. Any questions?
So, Board, that is a presentation to you for Update 111, and then for the 2 local that were not a part of 111, and then you'll be asked to approve those in the November board meeting. So any questions for Christy right now? Good job. Thank you. She took care of both of them.
All right, our next item is Highway 287 and Blue Mountain Road ramp project. Dr. Warren?
All right, Mr. McClure. Board, I very much compliment Tim on the work he's done on this. He's put in a lot of work on getting our challenges around Eaton, Schluter, and Adams done, and we've got some pretty good news.
I think so. Yep. Yeah, we've really put similar to the OLC. This is something that's taken many months, going on a year now, to come to fruition. But we are really close to bringing back some great news to you. The first bit of the news is in dealing with trying to solve the situation that presented itself down around Schluter, Eaton, and Adams, it became very clear very early on that we had to do something with highway service road that was in place. And so when I pull up the map there, you kind of see the area we're talking about. And the main concern was part of the plans for Adams, TxDOT required us to put a barricade in to not allow people egress out on Eagle towards the highway. Well, that obviously has just been neglected left and right from everybody that drives over there, including maybe some people in this room, but I won't mention any names. But that barricade's been actually even moved now at this point. I think someone in some big dually truck probably pushed it over to the side, so it's not even a barricade anymore. But I say all that to say that we talked with TxDOT, we had some engineers involved, and we said that we feel the best solution is to extend the service road further to the south and move the on-ramp, thus making that a one-way only so that we could actually use that as an exiting, properly use it and legally use it as an exiting route for us. If we follow the letter of the law, we only had one exit really out of that whole 3 campuses, and that's back to Willow Springs and back out. With the help of, also I'll commend Dr. Warren because he went through every legislator from here to the governor to get this thing moving again for us. And we've got the support now. TxDOT has kind of moved out of the way for the county. We owe a big thank you to the county and Commissioner Fickus and his staff because they've agreed to actually do the labor and the work with no charge. So that's a huge expense. Our early estimates on what we thought this might cost when we were just kind of kicking the ball around of could we get this project funded and moved down the road was close to about $2 million, $1.8 to $2 million is where we were. What you see on the last sheet there is the actual estimate provided by the county from the 60% set of documents that we have submitted or had an engineer submit on the construction of the road, and that's the estimate the county said we'll be happy to do the labor, do the work, supply all the man hours. However, somebody needs to fund the materials. And so the estimates that they're providing are state-let contracts, so they go through the same procurement methods that we do. So these are state contracts that they have, and they've given their estimates on what it would take to procure the work, which, again, it may be a little blurry, but it's about $630,000. And then if you add the engineering fees to that as well, brings the whole total to about $860,000 is what we're in a discussion with other entities. Dr. Warren and I met with City of Fort Worth this morning, the town city manager. They are looking at their resources to be able to support this project as well. And so our intent is today was one, bring you up to speed on what's going on with the project, and then secondly, hopefully by the next board meeting, be able to bring you back an interlocal agreement to supply the funding needed for the materials and talk to you about the reimbursement of any partnerships that we're able to gain from other entities like the City of Fort Worth. So they've committed to look at that and respond back to us next week. And then Christy will be working with the county to look at an ILA to provide the materials. The big caveat on this, just to kind of put it in perspective, when we started this conversation and started knocking on the doors with TxDOT and said, this is a problem, have you looked at it? Can you fix it? Can you work with us? They said, yeah, we've started to look at it. We're starting a study. Mark can probably give us all the details about how those studies go. But what they said is the fix is probably 10 years away. And we knew that's just really what an option for the growth we're seeing around there. And so we pushed a little bit harder, and they said, well, if we really moved mountains, we could get it to about 3 years from now. And I'm here before you telling you that the county's ready to go and has a spot reserved starting in December this year to start the work. And so we've really been pushing to try to make sure we can meet that date for the county. If we miss that date, the county is booked the rest of the year, and so then we're pushing it out. So to be able to take that from a 10-year time span down to maybe being in place by next year to help with the congestion down there is huge. And I would also be remiss if I didn't also thank Mr. Schluter because he has provided a great deal of insight. He's attended meetings with me and helped me along the way because, again, I'm not used to building roads. It's not really what I do, but Mr. Schluter has been a great resource for us there as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions. This is really informational item for you and letting you know what to be prepared for hopefully by the next board meeting, we have some news to bring to you.
Mr. McClure, on as far as other entities for providing the funding for the materials, is the City of Fort Worth the only one we're in discussions with on that?
That's the only one. Of course, you can see at the bottom of that list, there's some things that TxDOT is providing. We would hope that TxDOT would offer up more, but we've really not gotten a very good response from them in being able to participate more. Of course, the county was very generous, and City of Fort Worth has been engaged in this conversation with us the entire time. It's actually kind of where we started, was with them and saying, you need to help us fix this. And so I won't speak for Dr. Warren, but I feel pretty positive that we'll see some action out of them. They've been verbally committed about that since we've been talking to them. And so we'll see where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, when they come back to us.
Thank you for the update on this. Thank you for your work, Ryder, Mark, all of y'all. Thank you very much needed.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Good job.
All right, moving on to report, September Financial and Investment Report.
Board, if you'll look at your reports, this is the John show tonight, so he's got the floor. John, please roll.
Yeah, I've got a couple hours of reports here that won't take
And that concludes the reports for tonight. Thank you, John.
Hey, we work well together. Which one? This one? There we go. Okay. We start with the September Financial and Investment Report. We also have included with this the quarterly First Southwest Asset Management Public Investor Update, which recaps the quarter ending September the 30th. Fairly traditional stuff going on here. At this point, we're not investing. We're letting things mature. We had a $15 million security mature into the general operating fund to cover payroll and accounts payable for the month. Interest rates are up to about 2%. We're on $189 million worth of investments. And, of course, we're seeing the Federal Reserve continue to increase interest rates. There's multiple additional interest rate hikes going into 2019 priced in right now, which is great for the investments. What we're concerned about, quite frankly, though, is the impact on the housing industry. And we'll talk more about that in the 5-year financial forecast. But they're starting to see, not in this area in particular, because Texas always tends to be a bit stronger than the rest of the economy, but some softness or not quite as much strength, let's put it that way. I wouldn't say softness because it's not declining, but the rapid pace of growth in housing is not what it has been, and you're starting to see that because of the higher interest rates affecting affordability and things of that nature. So the economy is very strong, but the housing market's beginning to feel the impact of the Fed increases. We have the investment portfolio, according to board policy, is diversified in terms of investment instruments, maturity scheduling, and financial institutions, which reduces the risk of loss resulting from any over-concentration of assets. We have also pretty much tracking with the various measures that we use for performance. So everything is going pretty good right now. We earned $325,000 for the month of September, and we're up over $1.1 million year to date, of which about half of that is in the general fund, and the rest is spread through capital projects, debt service, and special revenue funds. All in all, the economy is very strong, is what they're telling us in the various attached reports from TexPool and First Southwest Asset Management. But it's something we're going to have to kind of continue to monitor as we start working our way into the budget process for next year. Be happy to answer any questions on the September Financial and Investment Report.
Any questions? Okay, moving on to 2018 tax roll turnover and analysis of delinquent tax roll and report of delinquent tax collections for July and June through June.
The auditor was pointed out in his presentation on the comprehensive annual financial report that we actually ended the year with less outstanding than we started the last year. So the collections have been very strong. Linebarger has done an outstanding job for us. And essentially what happens is every year there's a year lag for people to pay their taxes, and then they're turned over for delinquencies, and that's what we're dealing with right now, or talking about right now. Essentially, to summarize, the tax collections for 2017 was 13,000 parcels, and by comparison in 16 it was 10,000 parcels. So there's additional parcels coming across. The base tax that is owed is 1.4 billion versus 1.3 billion. So there's a few more parcels, but there's not as much, not much greater value being turned over. So it's a lot of smaller things in essence. The total delinquent tax roll for all years is 21,000 accounts with a 4.7 in the base tax. The report is very thorough. There's the status of the accounts, the property types, the degree of delinquency. I am going to touch base on their work plan, which is in their first report on page, I don't think it is page number, pardon me. But essentially their planned activities for the 18-19 tax collection cycle. They make targeted collection calls to delinquent taxpayers to assist them in finding a resolution of their debt. You know what, the last thing in the world, quite frankly, we want to do is own the property. It's very, very difficult to sell property, find buyers for property. You tend to get a lot of low bid offers and things like that, and people just fishing. So we really do try to work very hard with delinquent taxpayers before we ever take the property itself. They'll continue to mail demand letters to all delinquent taxpayers to increase the number and frequency of those mailings, with mailings going out in January, April, June, July, September, and December. So they send out 6. Mail specialized individual notices of intent to sue where it's required to the specific targeted delinquent taxpayers. And in this case, you know, for example, mobile homes, it's very, very hard to collect. The home may not even be there anymore. So these would be aimed at the higher dollar taxpayers where there's a really outstanding chance of collecting, as opposed to, you know, we do have to write off small de minimis amounts every year. File lawsuits against those who fail to respond to the notice of intent to sue letters. Continue to prosecute those lawsuits that are pending and enforce judgments. Initiate seizure and sale, and then schedule and hold foreclosure. And that's where, you know, we have just a handful of those, and of course they're all brought to the board for approval or denial. And in many cases we've been denying because we'll have something on the rolls appraised at $40,000, $100,000, and we'll get an offer for $5,000 or $10,000, and we just are not going to, you know, we owe the taxpayers. Now, to a certain extent, when we are in that situation, we are not looking for full property value, because the district can only keep that which we are owed in delinquent taxes. So let's say it's a $100,000 piece of property with $15,000 in taxes. We don't want the 100, but we sure want the 15. So 7,500 doesn't cut it as an offer. So we're looking for, try to get our taxes back that were owed the district. So that's pretty much the first part of that. And then the second piece talks about the delinquent tax collections for 17-18. Essentially, for the months of July 17 through June 18, the collection program resulted in $1.9 million in delinquent taxes, penalty and interest, and the attorney's fees included $1.8 million in base tax, $392,000.4 million in penalties and interest, and $313,200 in attorney's fees. Quite frankly, if you don't pay your taxes, there's a substantial penalty. So it's probably the best investment we can make is for you not to pay your taxes. And we really don't want to go down that path. But, pardon me, the report is attached, and I'll be happy to answer any questions on either of them. There's a lot of detail on the types of delinquencies and the age of the delinquencies, but essentially what it comes down to is the collection effort, and it's been outstanding.
Any questions? Okay, moving on to disbursement review, engagement summary report for the fiscal year end June 30th, 2017.
Now, this was one of my happier and better ideas, is I actually got this from private industry. We had someone come in at a company that I was running the operations for and audit freight bills, and essentially they would take 10% of whatever they recover. Well, this is in essence what's happening here. They get 10% of whatever they recover, and so it doesn't really cost us anything. It makes us money. Well, quite frankly, it didn't make us very much money. But then it didn't make them very much either. On 34,866 transactions totaling $66.1 million, they found 11 suppliers for $3,661.18. So that was the total recovery. So Brenda Klein and company are doing an unbelievably outstanding job. That's an error rate of less than 0.1%. I mean, it's just perfectly spot on. 99.94%, 9.43% of all transactions were appropriately coded. So I think you can have a lot of confidence, or I do for sure, and we all do, is in the abilities and the job that's being done by our accounts payable department. They stay on top of things. It's very impressive. They mentioned essentially where you get some of these issues is duplicate payments, overpayments, and a lot of times there's problems handling credits when there's a return. Sometimes that doesn't get picked up. So those are the things we watch especially carefully. The report is attached. We'll continue to work with this company, renew the contract every year like we have, but it's truly an outstanding effort on their part and protects the assets of the district by not overpaying. Another thing I'll point out is we have been hit with, and it's, Adam, was it TASR or TASB or TASBO? Somebody put out a letter now on all the fraudulent attempts to defraud districts. Who was it? It was TASB. Yeah, we noticed it about a month or so ago with some construction contracts, and now we've gotten hit on several different other areas. And what they're doing is they're using open records, check registers, whatever they can get a hold of through open records and websites and things, and they are impersonating major vendors and then sending you letters to start trying to fish out what you might owe that vendor so that you will write the check to these criminals rather than the appropriate vendor. And by vendors, I'm talking about construction vendors who may be owed more than $1 million. So these people are swinging for the fences. They're not just trying to nickel and dime you on some small instructional material account. So the fact that our accounts payable department is on top of things really helps. Brenda's brought me some things. Michelle Wolf, working in facilities, has brought some things as well. So we're all looking out now very carefully to make sure if any changes in address or any wiring instructions or things like that we're being very careful to verify these things because we're being hit as well as many other districts in the state of Texas are being hit by this. And we've talked to Mike Conklin in security, and they filed with, I believe, the FBI. So this is a threat we're taking extremely seriously out there. But I just want to bring it to your attention that we have a good department and we have a bad environment. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Anybody? Okay, moving on to the adopted budget for the 2018-19 year.
Okay. The budget document is at your station. It'll be on the website tomorrow. Inside the document, there is the document itself, of course, and then on the inside cover, there's a handy-dandy brochure, which we'd be happy to make additional copies if you should ever need it, if you were to attend something where you might feel like you would like to hand out some copies of that. But there's a two-part brochure that summarizes it, and then there's the 200-page document, essentially. Just talking about the document itself, essentially there's the major sections. It's made compliant for ASBO and what formerly GFOA requirements. GFOA no longer does this review, but we still follow their requirements on that. But essentially, there's the executive section, which highlights and summarizes everything that follows, all the additional sections. It's a snapshot of what you can expect to find in the rest of the document. It includes everything, literally, from the finances to the goals to the discussion of budget priorities, talks about tax rates. So it's a very comprehensive 20 or so pages. Then you hit the organizational section, and this is everybody always gets budgets backwards. They always think you start with numbers. You don't. You start with the strategic framework that Dr. Warren walked the district through and evolved and brought to your attention and you approved and participated in. That's what a budget process starts with. It's about words, not about numbers. And then the numbers are how you implement those words. And in this case here, we have the strategic plan, we have the district improvement plan, all the details that follow that. It gets into the organizational structure, the policies and procedures, and then the budget process itself in some detail, including the allocations to the campuses as well as the calendar. Also talks a bit about controls. Then we hit the more traditional section, which is the financial section, and there you have 5 years of data, audited data for 14-16 through 16-17. Last year's adopted budget and this year's adopted budget are shown in there. We do it in total, then we do it for the general fund, the debt service fund, and the grants, the special revenue funds, which are restricted in how they may be spent. And it's then summarized, and there's reporting in detail on all of that as well. Next thing was we hit the schools and programs section, and this is something I really do like. It lays out for every campus, once again, that 5-year time frame, and it talks about the mission statement, the enrollment, the employees by type, then you get into the general fund expenditures, and then we have inside the general fund expenditures some spending per student, so you can kind of see how that flows at the campus level. And then you get into performance reporting through the STAR and other mechanisms for such things as reading, ELA, writing, social studies, mathematics, science, and the TEA campus rating. Then we do it for the departments as well with what performance data we can pull down off of the TEA website, and then the district in total. The last section, this is my best section if you have insomnia and you can't sleep. It's taken straight out of the bond official statement. It was written by lawyers, financial lawyers, so that's probably the worst kind of lawyer imaginable. I mean, if you really need to know bond covenants, this is the place to go. And if you can't sleep through this, well, you might as well just get up and put on your clothes, mow the lawn or something. But it does have all the detail on the school finance system. It then talks about major revenue sources, which is important, and it gets into the comparison of the tax rates, history, assessed value of property growth, which we'll talk about some more in the next section on the 5-year financial forecast. There's some fun stuff in here. There's the performance measures on the TAPR for the academic side, and then on the financial side for School First, and then if you want to read something really that is kind of fun in all seriousness, it's back on, starting on page 182 through 186. So it's a bunch of pages, but it's the district and campus accomplishments, the student accomplishments, and the staff accomplishments. So that's fun to read in all seriousness, and you get a sense that a lot of really good things are happening in the district going through that section. Then we have some just general information in there as well. So this is something we do to kind of accumulate a lot of data sources in one place. It's more of a reference guide, and we've been doing it now for about 20 years. And they're out on the website if you need to direct somebody or somebody has a question. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Anybody? Okay. Last one, John. Your preliminary 5-year financial forecast.
Yes. So we normally do this in January. So Dr. Warren decided to challenge me to have it done in October, and it's a good exercise. We've got a lot of issues facing the district, and we're going into a legislative session, so this was a good time to take a look at it. I want to start out and talk briefly about what drives a forecast. In our case, both revenue and expense, revenue through the foundation school program, expense through both operations and construction, are driven by student enrollment. So it's the heart and soul of this district's cost and revenue structure. Then the next thing is, of course, the growth in the value of taxable property. Now this has two impacts. One is it generates revenue for the general fund. but then it gets capped in the general fund, and you suddenly find yourself, if you're above a targeted limit set by the state of Texas, paying Chapter 41 recapture. On the other side, though, there is the debt service or interest in sinking fund portion of the tax rate, and that is used to fund the construction of buildings, and thank heavens, as a fast-growth school district, that is not recaptured. So this is a critical piece of information. It's also a very difficult piece of information to forecast because it's a very dynamic environment, and when I talk to the appraisers at Tarrant, Denton, and Wise, they say, don't know. It'll be what it'll be. So it's very difficult to forecast. I'm going to talk a bit about it in a minute. Then, of course, we get into the budget itself, which is then the campus and program or departmental budget requests. And then we have the ultimate wild card, the 86th Texas legislature looking at us at this point. And in the past, they've kind of canceled each other out between the House and the Senate the last two sessions. But, you know, until you get into it, nobody knows. And one of the things that is a real unknown is whether or not they'll take any of the recommendations of the school finance working group, which they appointed in the interim to do an exhaustive, and they did do an exhaustive study and have made a lot of preliminary recommendations or thoughts that they're working through before they make their final recommendations. So there's a lot of interest in the finance working group. What the legislature will do once it hits will be interesting. This will also be an interesting legislature because we'll have a new Speaker of the House, and because the old one is retired. So by default, we're going to have a new one, and that will have a big impact as well. We have, of course, as I said, the student growth, and you see that going from 23,163 in 2017-18, which is projected to go up to 31,000 in 23-24. So that's an increase of just shy of 10,000 over the time frame. Employees will probably go from just under 2,400 to probably in excess of 2,500 easily at that point. These are just estimates. At this point, we're finishing out kind of the existing bond 2017 bond authorization. So all we have in terms of new campuses is some more elementary schools. This forecast actually goes into probably what will be the next bond authorization election. I've just put as a placeholder an additional elementary school. I think it's pretty safe to bet there'll be another high school and some middle schools in there, but where they will land, none of the work has been done, so at this point it would be just speculation. We did try to break out by types of grade levels, rather, of how the enrollment forecast would grow. You can see the high school going from 6,600 kids back in 17-18 to probably around 9,000 in 23-24. Elementaries will go up from about 11 to 14. Middle schools about 5.5 to say 7.5, somewhere in there. I mean, the numbers are specific, but we're really talking about estimates. So you see substantial student growth in all the areas. Property values, now this is the one that's really interesting. In 17-18, we had 12.94, let's just say 13% growth in the tax roll. And then this last year, the current year we're in, rather, it jumped all the way up to 18.5. And that was interesting because you see us going from $7 billion to $8.1 billion in homes. And that's the one that kind of concerns me with the mortgage rates going up to, it's really all perspective. I remember my dad getting a 5% loan back in the 50s and thinking we'll never see that again when we're paying 12, 13, and 14% in the 80s. But now it's like still way under 5%, but it's up. So it's all relative, but it is up, and that's affecting home ownership, refinancing, and a bunch of things. Non-home sites, which essentially is everything else, really soared. That went from 6.4 to 7.7 billion, so it's up about even more, about 1.3 billion. And so that was a huge jump there. I think we're going to continue to see strong growth in this area. One of the things that's interesting about this is when they take a piece of agricultural property and start developing it, there's that 5-year rollback on the taxes. So some of this number is kind of is being triggered by the conversion of raw land into production land and the essential look back on that. And even more interestingly, even minerals, which had been nothing but a bloodbath, we went from $2.5 billion down to $600 million. They went up 100 million as well. They went from 664 to 790. So we had growth across the board. At this point, we won't get any information at all from the appraisal districts until April. That's when the Denton County District will start dumping some rolls, and we kind of see where they were this year versus the last number of years. I go back 5, and just say, well, okay, we don't know where they're going to end, but we know where they were at this point in time. Let's see, what kind of a percentage are we looking at, and we track that week by week. At this point, as a placeholder, I'm going to use a conservative number of just 12%, which is fairly close to what we had last year. And this is essentially a placeholder at this point. If you talk to Rudy at Denton County, it's probably going to be 6%. He's very conservative, and he doesn't believe it until he sees it, and then he still doesn't believe it. And but I think 12 is a safe-ish number. I can't believe that Texas has got a really strong economy, so I think we're going to see strong property growth. And I mean, double-digit property growth in a district is good, really solid. So it's just a question of how solid. And then for conservatism's sake, I just tapered it off. Essentially, this is where we have been. Going back to 13-14, when we had current expenditures of $141 million. And I'm using current expenditures because intergovernmental includes recapture, and things get crazy with that. So I'm trying to focus on what it takes to run the business: instruction, libraries, nurses, co-curricular, all maintenance, but not construction, just maintenance, transportation, all those functions. So we had 141 million, 18,000, nearly 19,000 students. We generate $11 million surplus. It's bounced around ever since then. In 14-15, we were up 2.9 million. In 15-16, we were up 782,000. 16-17, we were down 3.2 million. 17-18, we just saw the audit. Now, this one's kind of a funny number in the sense that the operations was positive 3.9, but you got to remember we went out and spent $20 million on buses out of fund balance, and so it actually was a negative for the year for 16 million, but operations was positive. After looking at the major adjustments and the amendments that you approved earlier tonight, the estimate for the deficit has gone down from 12 million to about 6 million. We tend to run conservative, and so we probably will beat that number. So we probably will run a small negative finishing out this year. We'll continue to monitor that and give you better reports in January and throughout the rest of the year. But at this point, that's the best estimate we have, which is we'll probably run a small deficit, probably like we did in 16-17, somewhere between 3 and no more than 6 million at this point. Going forward, there's 18-19 again, of course, and what you see is that fourth column, Chapter 41, recapture, and there's a 1-year lag. So essentially what we're looking at is 5% student growth and 12, 18, 12, and still double-digit growth in property. So as a result, the haircut we're getting from the state of Texas through Chapter 41 recapture, you can see it's soaring. And I think Austin is paying $500 million right now. So these numbers are not out of line. I think Austin's recapture was $550 million, something like that. It was just an unreal kind. I mean, it was a percentage of $1 trillion, and so it was just huge amount of $1 billion, pardon me, just massive amount of recapture. So, but I see our current expenditures growing up to where they start to push $275 million or better in 23-24. Our enrollment's over 30,000, so we're getting to be a bigger and bigger district throughout. And of course, the fund balance drawag is a real problem. So this is something we're going to have to monitor every year. And the legislature, there'll be 2 legislative processes inside this forecast. So there's a couple of real wild cards for you. Here's the totals. I'd be happy to answer any questions or turn it over to Dr. Warren, I think, at this point.
Board, just to sum up, and Ron, you were not on the board when we gave this presentation last year. The remaining part of John's presentation, it was just the information that John researched on the process to call a tax ratification election, and that's, as one of my performance objectives this year is to do that research project, and I think we need to state very emphatically right now, our goal is to bring you a recommendation of not calling a TRE. We are going to, and John just described to you great examples of, even in the years that we've adopted deficit budget, we were within the course of the year of cost-cutting measures and saving measures. In the course of the year, we were still able to bring you a positive fund balance. So that's going to be our expectation, is make sure that with John and Rob working together so closely, and the rest of the leadership, campuses, and programs, we're going to continue to do the same. And the problem we have in that last slide that John showed you, the one biggest challenge we truly have is that recapture amount. Now that we're in that Chapter 41 club, when they're taking between 20 and 30 million away from us that our children will never see, that becomes challenging to try to create those balanced budgets. And that's when boards really truly look at trying to access those additional pennies. And so you are done with setting a tax rate. You cannot access any more pennies by board vote under current law. No telling what's going to happen in the spring, but current law, you cannot vote for any more pennies to help offset this recapture amount. So if we had to do so, we'd have to go through it for election. So that's for the reason why I wanted to make sure that you all saw this, even before the budget process started in January, just so you could start thinking about that. Any guidance you can provide me as we go through there, and just what your expectations are. And so John and his staff did a great job of putting together this presentation. Yep. Thank you, John.
Okay, Board, if you look back at the consent agenda, we have letter K to look at that was removed. Interlocal agreement with Texas Tech University for recruiting and advertising services for Northwest High School. Dr. Warren, you want to comment on that?
Celine, come on up. Dr. Simpson, did you have a specific question about that?
I do have a specific question.
So Lynn is here to give you those answers.
Thank you so much. I was just curious, what is our practice about opening this up for all universities, and what is the availability of space?
Sorry. Part of it was our opportunity with Texas Tech came about in a conversation. This was the first time we had actually had this approach come to us to be able to facilitate better conversations with our students and making better choices as far as acceptance into their programs. For the space area, we have plenty of room at each one of our campuses to have an officing area. They're not requiring a large amount of our space. The opportunities for TCC have been extended. However, right now they only want to work with Eaton High School, where although we're housing the Texas Tech, we would like to house the counselor at Northwest High School. They would actually work with all of our students, not just one campus. In addition, we've reached out to the University of North Texas. Bobby actually has a conference call tomorrow over our dual credit options and opportunities and building a memorandum of understanding there. And then also with TWU as well. And we've reached out to them with our biomedical science programs over the last year. It seems to be a continual dance when we work with a lot of our university partnerships. With Texas Tech, it wasn't that way at all. Actually, they have been overwhelmingly extending to us, very kind and generous in their opportunities. Every time we've gone to them with an idea or an approach, we work with them with the CISER, with the Center for STEM Integration. And then we also have students that are applying in a large number to Texas Tech at Byron Nelson, Northwest, and then we don't have the Eaton data yet. But we will, I think we're going to see a large number there as well. It's in the top 3 or 4 of the top 25. Number 1 is TCC at every campus and UNT. So having our top 4 campuses really brought in so that they can have good one-on-one academic advising for our students is going to be giving us a competitive advantage. We've just got to get somebody else that wants to play with us.
And so if I understood you correctly, this person would actually serve all 4 of our
Absolutely.
high school campuses.
Yes, they would just be housed at Northwest. That's where our greatest area of need is as far as students with that one-on-one when we look at additional academic advising for students in that area. And we have a lot of students that have been underserved. We have a larger number of low socioeconomic population there as well.
And I don't know, but do we have policy that helps to guide these practices?
I mean, we have policy about how we do the MOUs and how we do the agreements. And basically it's up to program directors and executive directors to try to cultivate those agreements that we, bring to you for final.
I just felt like that I think, I want to be sure that there's equity and we do have a fair practice for all constituents, whether it be parents that want to see certain universities, or universities that want to have space. I just would like to be sure that we have equity and policy that can guide us.
Absolutely, and I think we would welcome that as well. In all of our partnerships, we're pretty unique because of how our district is laid out. Most school districts have 1, maybe 2 MOUs that they're working with. Usually they have one standard partner, and they have like a TCC counselor in Eagle Mountain, Saginaw. It's predominantly TCC. Fort Worth, it's all Tarrant County, where we have students who don't pay ad valorem tax in Denton and Wise County. Therefore, they don't meet the credentials for certain services.
Board, I'd recommend approval of the agreement. Oh, I'm sorry.
This personnel, are they going to be doing presentations to parents and students on financial aid, scholarship applications, college applications, all those types of things that especially our underserved students may not have access to?
Yes, sir. That's the primary role in that, and part of the reason the conversation was born when they kept asking, how can we help? The number one thing we said was we need additional advisement for our students to ensure that they can get the most benefit in the post-secondary realm without taking on the least amount of debt, and really helping them understand how to navigate that FAFSA paperwork and how to procure scholarships in a larger scale.
Madam President,
Mr. Wright.
I move to approve the interlocal agreement with Texas Tech University for recruiting and advertising services for Northwest High School as recommended by the administration.
Okay. I have a motion by Mr. Wright, a second by Mr. Hastings. All those in favor? 6-1. Okay. My show. All right, moving on to Board President's report. The only thing I have, you have an invitation at your place to Adams Middle School dedication, which is November 6th at 7 p.m. And now Superintendent's report.
And Board, just a couple of things. We're about to, those of you who would like to, about to walk over and watch our wonderful bands in the band showcase that's happening right now. Football, we have Thursday and Friday football. Eaton's playing Denton Geyer on Thursday, and Byron Nelson's playing Keller on Friday. And then next Monday, the 22nd, next Monday, the 29th, we're going to have our college and career fair at Northwest High School, and that's always a lot of fun. That starts at 6 p.m. Madam President, that's all we have.
All right.